everyone, I am Lyan C. Baril, and for this video, I'm going to assess the musculoskeletal or the back and extremities of our patient. So, I am going to assess those first by inspecting the gait and then also, the gait and then also the posture of our patient on how he or she distribute the way, the posture, and then also the erected and how our patient move, and then also if it is coordinate to the body posture. Alright, so here it is. Here it is, my patient, and then let's see if he can walk patiently, and then if it is coordinate. So, sir, sad lang ka, sir. Alright, so man, okay ra imong paglakaw, sir, walay bugat sa lawas. Wala, okay. So, ito siya. So we can see, and then we can also document the finding that if it is distributed, and then also, the weight of our patient is distributed, and then the posture was erected also, and then where the movement was coordinated. So that's it for inspecting the gait and also inspecting the posture of our patient. Alright, next is we are going to inspect the symmetry of our patient. So as you can see, posture man, sir, tarong ang tagkandog, sir. Alright, so okay, sir, walay may bugat sa lawas, walay mga kuan. Lihok, sir, paano na lihok? Alright, so ito siya. So we can determine that by inspecting that it is symmetrical. Then walay lain, same na gihapon, symmetric in the left, symmetric in the right. So that's it for inspecting the symmetry. So next is we are going to test the ROM, or the range of motion of our patient. So this is where to determine the cervical spine of our patient. So first is we are going to determine this cervical spine, which is the head. So sir, pwede sir, sundog lang ako, anak. And then, talayo, sir, na pinakaan. Alright, so we can see it as we observe the test of range of motion. So now, we can determine that the cervical spine is full. Hindi nahabilin, dapat ano. So then also, the remarks on it is that it is 45 degree, and the flexion and the extension of our patient is 45 degree. So that's it, and we can now document the finding and also finding of the result of our patient. So alright, so next is we are going to determine, or still testing the range of motion of our patient, which is the thoracic and then the lumbar. So this is where nga ang pasyente nato mo-bend sila to touch the toes. Alright, so sir, makatouch mo ba ka sa toes? Okay. Sige ba, sir? Alright, katulo lang palukan. Alright, so di lang makita sa camera, but still I can see it here, observing or to test the range of motion of the thoracic and lumbar of our patient, that our patient can touch the toes. So it means the flexion and the which means is full. So we can write it here, and then the remars is still in the 75 to 90 degree, and then smooth raman sa siya. Balik, sir, to tanon. Alright, so makita na itong bend ang iyahang area, and then so we can now remarks on it. And then also you can see that the spinal processes is in alignment. So that's it. So I'm done documenting the finding of the results. So we can now proceed on assessing to the other test. So now we are going to proceed to the upper extremities of our patient. First is we are going to determine if it is full or limited sa shoulders of the patient. So we can see, sir, is it okay mag-hubol ako, sir, to determine this lang sa shoulder? So our patient is nagkuhan na siya, naghubol na siya. So we can see nga kanang there are no swelling, can also nga symmetrical ang iyahang shoulder. So, sir. Straight lang, sir. Alright, symmetrical. And then, there are no redness. Symmetric na po ang iyahang color sa skin. And then, also, deformity of the hip. So, medyo warm lang po siya. And then, the muscles are fully developed. You can see it. Na. Pero, medyo pan po magkain na siya. So, alright. And then, as what I've said, it is even and symmetric. And then, also, there are no tenderness of the shoulder of our patient. So, now, we can proceed on to the next. So, we are going to test the range of motion of our patient. Kauban siya sa shoulder and also to the arm. So, sir, kanang pwede kang sundogon nimo nga na nakaana ka, sir. I mean, paana, sir. Straight na to, sir. 1, 2, 3, go. Alright, so we can see it that the hyperextension of our patient is in a 50 degree. So, next is we are going to just okay. Straight lang, sir. Straight. 1, 2, 3, go. Balik. Balik, sir. Alright, so it is in adduction ng tawag, which is still in a 50 degree. So, next is we are going to the external rotation. Nga dapat makama. Sige. Sir, I-spread lang pa. Sige. Alright. So, it is external rotation. Then, sir, ang ariyan na po. Ipatubang lang sana. 2, 3. Alright. So, it is 90 degree. So, ang external niya o ang internal rotation is in a 90 degree. So, it is normal finding. So, we can now determine the document the finding of the results of our patient. So, we can now proceed in the next. Alright, so now we are going to proceed the elbow of our patient. So, ang client nato is that musundog niya hapon. Sir, paano, sir? There is starting right here and here. Right? 1, 2, 3. Alright, so makita nato or we can now document the finding that our patient was able to flex and then extend the elbow. And then, so we can also call this pronutation or supination of our patient. So, let's say nga, iyang ari ay sa table. So, this is where to determine if it's supination kung ari and then pronutation ka na. Ana na siya. Kung mukha. So, let's just assume nga table ni siya. Iyara na ko na nila. So, alright. So, we can see it nga 90 degree ang iyang pagkuan. Right. So, lihok gihapon ang iyang elbow kung ano mag-ana-ana. So, now we can now document the finding. It's still coordinate. Diba? You can see it. So, we can now proceed to the next. So, alright, next is we are going to inspect and palpate the wrist of our patient. If it has a size, the shape, the symmetry of the color, and then if there's swelling. And to palpate if there is tenderness, and then also the nodules. So, as we can see, symmetry na yung color. Same size. So, same size siya. The wrist has the same size. And then, there are no, without redness siya. So, alright. So, we can now palpate the anatomic the snap box of our patient. So, this is where to determine if there are tenderness that we palpate on it on the back of the wrist. So, mani siya diri dapit. So, this is the anatomic snap box of our patient. So, if we are going to palpate this, yes, the palpating the anatomic snap box, so there are no tenderness. Kaya pag inani magud mo, this is where to determine the tenderness. Alright, so that's it. So we can now determine or document the findings, and we can now proceed to the next. So, I'm done for inspecting, and then we can also now test the range of motion of our patient. So, first is we have here the flexion or the hyperextension. So, bali flexion paubos, then extension is kadunod. Naridapit. So, it started with the extension which is 70 degree. Sir, sundog lang na sir, paana? Okay, ganda. Okay. Alright, so, okay ra. May mayo yung pagkapan. Next is the radial ulnar deviation. So, radial ulnar deviation is that one as siya. Okay, started in a radial deviation, 20. Sige, radial deviation, sir. Okay, next is ulnar deviation, 3. Alright, so, that's it. So, we can now document the finding that the risk of our patient is coordinated by the being or the deflection and the hyperextension and then also the radial ulnar deviation. So, alright, we are done and we can now next to the procedure that we are going to have this fingers and then also the hands of our patient. So, this is where to test the ROM gihapon, which is the range of motion. So, first, sir, is that the abduction, which is, igana mo, sir, kumukuhan mo na. Alright, so makita na to, normal ra yung pag-resistance sa yung pag-abduct niya. And the next, sir, is close. Alright, so it is what you call the adduction. Kay ganina, abduction man ang pagdaka niya, adduction. And the next is the flexion, hyperextension. If mga na, sir. Sige, anasa. Okay, balik, sir. Alright, so next is that that is what you call by the hyperextension and the flexion of the finger of our patient. So next is that the thumb away finger. Sige, sir. The thumb away finger. Okay. Sige, sir. Pakalit lang na. Alright, so okay. So next is that the thumb teaching base of the small finger. Okay. Alright, so makita ito hapon. So, we can determine nga, ang ato pasyente has a normal finding and then sunod ra gihapon ang iyang pagkuhan. Alright? So, sunod ra siya sa katong the adduction, the abduction, and then the hyperextension and flexion, and then also ang kadong thumb away, and then the thumb that is touching in the base of the small finger. So, we can now proceed to the next. So, alright, we are now going to inspect the hips of our patient. So, we can see that this is the hips of our patient. So, we are going to inspect the symmetry and then the shape of the hips. So, we can see that ang buttocks sa ato ang pasyente is has an equal size. This one, equal size here sa siya. And then also, the iliac crest are symmetric in height. And then, hips are stable. See? Same ra gihapon. Also, there are no tender and then without crepitus as we can see it. And now we can proceed to the next. So now we are going to test the ROM gihapon, the range of motion of our patient, which is the knee and then kauban na po sa hips mo na siya. So, for the knee and then the hips, hip flexion with the knee, where it is straight. So, sir, up straight lang gamay mo. Saka. Ato ba na dito, sir? Okay. Alright. So, ay, sa pigas sa patel, sir. Alright. Next is the hip flexion with the knee, where it is flexed. So, pigas, sir. Ay, ito bang, sir, direct? Okay. Pigas. So, next is kanang abduction and adduction, which is mura ra gyapon ka nang nagana, sir. Okay. Then, balik. Okay. Balik. Sige. Okay. Alright. So, next is the external rotation, which is kanang ana, sir. That, for example, nga nakahigda lang ka nga hyperextension, balik likod na ka, sir. And then, ang imong tail. Sir. Ang imong tail is that one. Ayan na, sir. Sige pa, sir. Alright. So, that's it. So, that's it nga. Katugi ko na nang ningi sa ato ang pasyente. So, now we can proceed to the next. Alright. So, next that we are going to palpate the knee area of our patient. So, sir, kanang if there are bulging in the knee test, and then also to stroke at naabot, and then also to observe some medial side of the body. So, sakit, sir. Okay. So, straight, sir, straight. Straight na din. Tubang itala, sir. Tubang na ko, sir. So there are no bulging of our patient, so we can now proceed to the range of motion of our knees nga. Sir, Baril, itong inanan, sir. Ato kuan. Alright. Ika, sir. Alright. So, also, we gonna perform the mockery test. So, for example, nakahiglat na pero magtingkod na ka itong pasyente. So, for example, straight na yung kuan. Sige, sir, straight. Nang duha ka tiil. Straight ang duha na to ka tiil, sir. And then also, ato yung kuan. So, we can determine nga as we inspect and palpate the knee of our patient, and also by testing the range of motion, there are no pain in examining it, and then also naka-flex po siya, and then naka-extend po siya sa iyang tiil. So, flexion in the 120 to 130, and then also the 15 degree of extension. So, there are no plane or clicking was noted. So, that's it, and then we can now proceed to the last of our assessment in the back and extremities of the musculoskeletal. So now we are going to inspect and palpate the toes of our patient, the ankle and the feet of our patient. So we can see it nga kanang kuan siya, it is symmetrical, same ra siya. So wala kay mga something na sakit dire sa motil, sir. Wala sad. Alright. So there are no pain, just like what the patient said to me, and then no pain, no heat, there are no swelling, it's warm, and then also some nodules that are noted there are no also. So we can see it na kanang pointed ang iyang mga kuan diri then walay something nga mga abnormal nga makita nato nga findings. So now we are going to assess the metatarsophalangeal joints by squeezing the foot from each side with the thumb. So ito yung one. Kita, sir? So now we are going to test now the range of motion, yes, the roam of our patient, which is the focusing on the ankle and the feet of our patient. So we are going to repeat some maneuvers against the resistance nga kanang i-evert or inversion nato ang tail. So first is we are going to dorsiflex and plantar flexion of our patient. So, sir, ano ba, sir? Alright. Straight na, sir. Alright. So, next is we are going to eversion and inversion of our patient. Ano ba, sir? Sige. Kaya, paano na to, sir? I-inverse na to. Itong kuan. Tail. Okay. The next is the abduction and then adduction. Sige, Dire lang sir, sa space lang. Ito. So, that's it for assessing the musculoskeletal of our patient from also the head and then until the toe. So, that's it. So, thank you for watching and God bless.